The loudest people in every room are usually the most insecure, desperately trying to convince themselves they matter by drowning out everyone else. We've been programmed to believe that confidence comes with volume, that leadership requires a megaphone, that influence demands attention. But I'm here to tell you something that will shatter everything you've been taught about success. The most powerful people in history changed the world not by shouting from stages, but by whispering truth into individual hearts, while everyone else is fighting for the microphone. The real revolutionaries are having quiet conversations that reshape destinies. Your silence isn't your weakness. It might be your greatest strength. The world doesn't need another loud voice adding to the chaos. It needs your authentic whisper cutting through the noise. Stop trying to compete with the volume and start trusting the value of what you actually have to say. In 1952, inside a textile factory in Birmingham, 500 workers stood ready to walk out. Tensions had been building for months. Management refused to listen. Union leaders were shouting demands through megaphones. The noise was deafening, but nothing was moving. Then something extraordinary happened. A 12-year-old girl named Rosa, whose mother worked the night shift, walked up to the plant supervisor during the chaos. She tugged on his sleeve and whispered just 7 words. "My mama says you're scared too, sir." The supervisor stopped. The shouting continued around them, but he knelt down to her level. In that whisper, he heard something the megaphones couldn't deliver: truth without agenda, honesty without attack. Within 20 minutes, he called for a meeting. By sunset, an agreement was reached that had eluded negotiators for weeks. Rosa's whisper accomplished what 500 raised voices could not, you see. We live in a world that has convinced us that louder means stronger, that volume equals value. We watch the person who shouts the loudest in the meeting get the attention. We see the loudest politician get the headlines. We observe the person with the biggest social media presence getting the followers. And slowly, quietly, we begin to believe a lie, that unless we can boom like thunder, we don't matter. But I want to tell you something that will change how you see your own voice forever. The most powerful forces in nature are often the quietest. A tiny seed breaks through concrete not with a shout, but with persistent, quiet pressure. The ocean doesn't announce its power with noise. It shapes continents with steady, relentless whispers against the shore. Your heart, the most vital muscle in your body, works in whispers, never calling attention to itself, yet keeping you alive every second of every day. Science has proven something remarkable about whispers. In the right conditions, a whisper actually travels further than a shout. When you shout, the sound waves become chaotic. They scatter, they lose their focus. But a whisper maintains its integrity. It cuts through noise because it demands attention rather than forcing it. It invites people to lean in rather than step back. Think about the last time someone whispered to you. What did you do? You stopped what you were doing. You focused completely. You gave them your undivided attention. That's the power you possess right now, sitting where you are, reading these words. You have the ability to make people lean in, to make them focus, to make them listen, not because you're loud, but because what you have to say matters. But somewhere along the way, you were taught that your voice isn't important unless it reaches a certain volume. Maybe it was in school when the teacher only called on the kids who raised their hands highest and spoke loudest. Maybe it was at home where the person who argued loudest got their way. Maybe it was at work where the person who dominated meetings got the promotions. And gradually you began to believe that quiet equals weak, that soft equals insignificant. Let me destroy that lie right now. Your personal authority has nothing to do with how loud you speak. It has everything to do with the authenticity of what you say and the truth you carry. When you speak from genuine experience, from real wisdom, from authentic caring, people don't need volume to recognize value. They feel it. Rosa didn't need a megaphone because her words carried the weight of truth. She saw what the adults had missed, that behind all the supervisor's tough exterior was someone who was just as scared and uncertain as everyone else. Her whisper was powerful because it was accurate, not because it was amplified. You carry insights right now that nobody else in the world possesses. You have lived experiences that have taught you things that can be found in any book. You have observations about life, about people, about problems and solutions that are uniquely yours. These insights don't need a microphone to be meaningful. They need authenticity, they need courage, and they need your voice to carry them. The tragedy is not that the world is full of loud, empty voices. The tragedy is that it's missing your quiet, meaningful one. While you're waiting to speak up until you feel ready, until you feel worthy, until you feel loud enough, problems go unsolved, people go unencouraged, and opportunities for positive change slip away. Every revolution started with a whisper. Every great movement began with someone speaking quietly to one person, then another, then another. Every significant change in human history started not with someone standing on a platform shouting to thousands, but with someone sitting across from another person, sharing truth in conversation. Your whisper matters because it's yours, it carries your DNA, your experience, your perspective, your heart. When you speak, you're not just adding noise to the world, you're adding a voice that has never existed before and will never exist again. That makes every word you speak irreplaceable. The question isn't whether your voice is loud enough. The question is whether you're brave enough to use it. Because right now, somewhere, someone needs to hear exactly what you have to say, exactly the way you would say it. They don't need it shouted from a stage. They need it whispered from your heart to theirs. Your voice matters even when you whisper. Actually, especially when you whisper. Marcus Williams pushed his cleaning cart through the executive floors of Henderson Industries every night for 12 years. Most people didn't see him, not really. He was part of the invisible workforce. The people who keep the world running while others sleep. But Marcus had eyes that saw everything and a mind that never stopped thinking. Night after night, he watched the executives leave their whiteboards covered with problems they couldn't solve. He saw the crumpled papers in their trash cans, the frustrated phone calls, the late night strategy sessions that went nowhere. And one particular problem kept appearing on every board. In every meeting, the company was hemorrhaging $3 million annually on a production process that no one could figure out how to fix. One morning, as the cleaning supervisor was making rounds, Marcus pulled him aside. His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. "Sir, I noticed something about that production line problem they keep talking about. What if they tried running the third conveyor belt 15 minutes before the second one starts? The timing might solve the bottleneck." The supervisor looked at him strangely, but promised to pass it along. 3 weeks later, Marcus found a bonus check in his locker. The 15-minute adjustment had saved Henderson Industries $2.8 million in the first quarter alone. The whispered suggestion from a man nobody noticed had solved what teams of engineers couldn't crack. But here's what's remarkable about Marcus's story. It wasn't remarkable to Marcus. He never thought his 12 years of observing production flows gave him insights that MBA graduates might miss. He never considered that his perspective as someone who cleaned up after every failed experiment might be exactly what was needed. He almost didn't say anything because he didn't think his voice mattered. How many solutions are locked inside people the world has labeled as ordinary? How many breakthroughs are trapped in the minds of those who believe their background disqualifies their brilliance? You see, the world has created a false hierarchy of whose voices count. It says the person with the most degrees speaks first. The person with the biggest title gets the floor. The person with the most experience gets heard. But problems don't read resumes. Challenges don't check credentials. Solutions come from insight, not from positions. And insight can strike anyone, anywhere, at any time. Marcus had something the executives lacked. He saw the whole picture. While they focused on spreadsheets and projections, he watched the actual process. While they theorized in boardrooms, he observed reality on factory floors. His cleaning cart was his mobile classroom, and 12 years of night shifts had given him a PhD in how things actually work. There's a profound difference between being heard and being listened to. Being heard is about volume and presence. Being listened to is about value and truth. Marcus wasn't heard for 12 years, but when he finally spoke, he was truly listened to because what he said was worth hearing. You might not work in a factory, but you have your own version of that cleaning cart. You have your own unique vantage point that gives you perspectives others miss. Maybe you're the customer service representative who actually talks to customers while executives make decisions in isolation. Maybe you're the parent who understands child behavior while experts debate theories. Maybe you're the community member who sees problems that politicians miss from their offices. Your background isn't your limitation, it's your education. Your position isn't your prison, it's your perspective. Every role you've played, every struggle you've faced, every observation you've made has equipped you with insights that the world needs. The myth of overnight success makes us believe that important voices emerge suddenly, fully formed, ready to change the world. But that's not how real influence works. Marcus didn't become valuable the night he spoke up. He had been valuable for 12 years. His voice didn't suddenly matter when management listened. It had always mattered. The difference was that someone finally created space for it to be heard. Most revolutionary ideas didn't start in boardrooms or laboratories. They started in kitchens, in workshops, in places where people solved real problems with practical wisdom. The airplane was invented by bicycle mechanics, not aerospace engineers. The computer was developed by people working in garages, not corporate headquarters. Your whisper carries the weight of your experience. When you speak from what you know, from what you've seen, from what you've learned through living, you're not just offering an opinion, you're sharing intelligence that can't be found anywhere else. Marcus's story proves something powerful. Your value isn't determined by your visibility. Your significance isn't measured by your status. Your voice matters, not because of where you stand in the world's hierarchy, but because of what you see from where you stand. The question isn't whether you're qualified to speak. The question is whether you're willing to share what you've learned from living. Because somewhere in your experience, in your perspective, in your quiet observations, there might be the solution someone desperately needs to hear. Elena Martinez spent her days hunched over a sewing machine in a cramped apartment, taking in alterations to make ends meet. Her fingers were rough from years of needlework, her back ached from long hours, and her income barely covered rent. By every worldly measure, she was unremarkable. But Elena possessed something that would outlast any corporate empire. She had the heart of an encourager. When Maria, a young mother from down the hall, came to Elena's door with tears in her eyes and a job interview dress that didn't fit, Elena didn't just alter the hemline. As she worked, she whispered words that would change a life. You have everything they need inside you already. This dress is just helping the outside match what's already true about you on the inside. Maria got the job, but more importantly, she carried Elena's whisper into her new workplace, where she began encouraging other women. She shared Elena's words with her sister, who passed them to her daughter, who carried them into her classroom, where she became the teacher who saw potential in struggling students. Elena never knew that her whispered encouragement to one desperate mother would create a ripple effect that would touch 3 generations. She never tracked how Maria's confidence led to her promotion, which enabled her to start a mentorship program for single mothers. She never saw how Maria's sister used those same words to encourage her daughter to pursue engineering when everyone said girls couldn't do math. She never witnessed Maria's niece becoming the teacher who refused to give up on kids others had written off. This is how real influence works, not through platforms and podiums, but through intimate connections. Not through mass broadcasts, but through personal conversations. Elena built an empire, not of money or fame, but of human potential unleashed, one whisper at a time. You see, whispers create deeper roots than shouts create branches. When someone shouts encouragement at you from a stage, it might inspire you for a moment. But when someone whispers truth into your heart during your darkest hour, it transforms you permanently. Elena's whisper didn't just bounce off Maria's ears, it settled into her soul, the compound effect of small. Consistent voices is more powerful than any single loud moment. Every time Elena encouraged someone, she was making a deposit in the bank of human potential. She was investing in a future she would never see, but would absolutely help create. This is the responsibility that comes with understanding your voice has power. Once you realize that your words can change trajectories, that your encouragement can unlock destinies, that your whisper can build empires of hope in human hearts, you can never go back to believing you don't matter. Elena's sewing machine was her mission field, your workplace, your neighborhood, your family gathering, your social media platform. These are yours. You don't need permission to encourage. You don't need credentials to see potential in others. You don't need a title to whisper truth into someone's life. Right now, there's someone in your world who needs to hear what only you can say, the way only you can say it. They need your particular brand of encouragement, your specific perspective on their potential, your unique way of seeing possibilities they can't see in themselves. Elena's story teaches us that empires aren't always built with steel and concrete. The most lasting empires are built with words that heal, voices that encourage, and whispers that unlock human potential. These empires outlast corporations, outlive governments, and outreach any monument ever built. Your whisper has the power to build something eternal in someone's heart. The question isn't whether you have enough influence. The question is whether you'll use the influence you already have to whisper life into the people around you. We live in the loudest generation in human history. Every day, the average person encounters more information than someone a century ago processed in a lifetime. Your phone buzzes with notifications. Your feed scrolls with opinions. Your ears are assaulted by advertisements, arguments, and announcements. The world has become a symphony of noise. And somewhere in that chaos, wisdom is drowning. But here's what the loud world doesn't want you to know. Noise isn't communication, and volume isn't value. The loudest voice in the room is rarely the wisest. The person demanding the most attention usually has the least worth saying. And in this ocean of artificial urgency and manufactured outrage, your authentic whisper has become more precious than gold. Think about what happens to your mind in constant noise. You become reactive instead of responsive. You start speaking to be heard rather than speaking to create change. You begin measuring your worth by how many likes, how many shares, how many people are paying attention to your volume rather than your value. But real influence has never worked that way. When noise increases, the power of authenticity increases even more. When everyone is shouting, the person who speaks with quiet confidence stands out like a lighthouse in a storm. When the world is full of artificial voices, your genuine whisper becomes magnetic. You possess something this noisy world desperately needs, your unique perspective. You've lived through experiences no one else has faced exactly the way you face them. You've learned lessons through trials that can't be downloaded or purchased. You've developed insights through living that no algorithm can replicate. Your perspective isn't just different, it's irreplaceable. When you speak from your authentic experience, you're not adding to the noise. You're cutting through it. You're offering something the world can't get anywhere else. Your truth, shaped by your journey, delivered in your voice. But here's the trap many fall into. They think they need to become louder to compete with the noise. They believe they must adopt the world's volume to have the world's impact. So they start shouting their whispers. And in doing so, they lose exactly what made their voice valuable in the first place. The difference between speaking to be heard and speaking to create change is motivation. When you speak to be heard, you're performing. When you speak to create change, you're serving. When you perform, you need applause. When you serve, you need only authenticity. Your whisper doesn't need amplification, it needs courage. The same courage Elena had when she spoke life into Maria. The same courage Marcus had when he shared his observation. The same courage Rosa had when she whispered truth to power. This courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being faithful to what you know, faithful to what you've learned, faithful to the voice you've been given. It's about refusing to let the world's noise convince you that your quiet truth doesn't matter. The tragedy of our time isn't that there are too many voices. It's that too many authentic voices are staying silent, intimidated by the artificial volume around them, while you're waiting for the noise to quiet down. Problems persist that your perspective could solve while you're hoping for a better moment to speak. Opportunities pass that your insight could seize. Your voice isn't meant to compete with the noise, it's meant to cut through it. Your whisper isn't meant to become a shout. It's meant to remain authentic while becoming courageous. The world doesn't need another loud voice. It needs your true voice. It needs your whispered wisdom. It needs your quiet strength. It needs you to speak. Not because you can outshout the noise, but because your authentic whisper is exactly what someone needs to hear above all the chaos. There's a woman in her 70s named Grace Thompson who sits in a nursing home in Ohio, staring out a window most days, watching birds. The staff thinks she's just passing time, waiting. But Grace carries a secret that would astonish them. Her whispered words, 43 years ago, are still changing lives today, rippling through generations she'll never meet. In 1981, Grace was a secretary at a small insurance company during lunch breaks. She noticed a young man named David sitting alone day after day, looking defeated. He was new to the city, struggling with his job and clearly battling something deeper. Most people walked past David. Grace walked toward him. She sat down one Tuesday afternoon and asked a simple question. What's the story you're telling yourself about your life? David looked up, surprised someone had noticed him. That I'm not smart enough, not good enough, that I'll never amount to anything, he whispered back. Grace leaned in and spoke words that would echo through decades. Stories can be rewritten, but only by the person holding the pen. You're holding your pen right now. That conversation lasted 15 minutes. Grace never saw David again after he left the company 2 weeks later. She had no idea that her whispered truth became the foundation David built his life upon. She didn't know he would repeat her words to himself during law school when studies got difficult. She never learned that he graduated top of his class, whispering, "I'm holding my pen," during the bar exam. Grace couldn't have imagined that David would become a family court judge who specialized in helping troubled youth. She never witnessed him looking into the eyes of 16-year-old gang members and whispering, "Stories can be rewritten, but only by the person holding the pen." She never saw the tears in those young faces when they realized someone believed they could change their story. She doesn't know about Michael, the gang member who became a youth counselor because of David's whisper. She's unaware of Sarah, the teenage mother who went back to school because Michael repeated Grace's words. She has no idea about the hundreds of children Sarah taught as a principal. Carrying that same message of rewritten stories into classrooms across 3 states, Grace's 15-minute whisper to a lonely young man has echoed through 43 years, touching thousands of lives she'll never know about. Teachers who refused to give up on struggling students. Parents who saw potential instead of problems. Children who grew up believing they could rewrite their stories because someone whispered that truth to someone who whispered it to someone who whispered it to them. This is the power of your whisper. It doesn't stop with the person you speak to. Every truth you share, every encouragement you offer, every moment you choose to speak life instead of staying silent creates ripples that will outlive you. Your voice becomes part of an eternal echo that bounces through time, touching lives in ways you cannot predict or track. But here's the heartbreak. While Grace's whisper traveled through decades, changing story after story, Grace herself sits in that nursing home believing her life didn't matter much. She thinks she was just a secretary who answered phones and filed papers. She has no idea she's responsible for transformed families. How many of us are living like Grace before David walked into her life? How many of us have convinced ourselves that our quiet existence doesn't create meaningful impact? How many of us are waiting for permission to speak wisdom we already possess? The tragedy isn't that the world lacks great voices. The tragedy is that the world is full of people who have something important to say, but are waiting for someday, waiting for better circumstances, waiting for more confidence, waiting for someone else to go first. Your voice carries DNA that has never existed before and will never exist again. When you speak from your experience, your pain, your victories, your lessons learned, you're not just sharing information, you're offering transformation. You're giving someone else permission to rewrite their story because you had the courage to speak yours. Every unexpressed thought is a gift never given. Every unshared piece of wisdom is a light never lit. Every time you choose silence when you could choose to speak life, you rob the world of something irreplaceable. Think about the whispers that changed your own life. Remember the person who saw potential in you when you couldn't see it yourself. Recall the moment someone spoke truth that shifted everything. Consider the conversation that gave you permission to become who you are today. That person may not even remember what they said, but their whisper became part of your foundation. You have that same power right now. In your relationships, your workplace, your community, your family, there are people waiting for someone to whisper truth into their lives. They don't need you to have all the answers. They need you to share what you've learned. They don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be authentic. Maybe it's the coworker who seems overwhelmed and needs to hear that their contribution matters. Maybe it's the neighbor struggling with a decision who needs your perspective. Maybe it's your own child who needs to hear that you believe in their ability to overcome challenges. Maybe it's a stranger who just needs someone to see them as Grace saw David. Your whisper might be the turning point in someone's story. Your words might be the catalyst that helps someone rewrite their narrative. Your voice might be the key that unlocks potential someone didn't know they possessed. The ripple effect of your courage to speak will extend far beyond what you can see. The person you encourage today might encourage someone tomorrow, who will encourage someone next month, who will encourage someone next year. Your voice becomes part of an eternal conversation about human worth, potential, and possibility. But the ripple only begins when you break the surface of silence. It starts when you decide that your perspective matters, that your experience has value, that your voice deserves to be heard. It begins when you stop waiting for someday and start whispering truth today. Grace is still alive, still watching birds, still unaware of her incredible legacy. But you have something Grace doesn't have. You have this moment. You have today. You have the opportunity to begin your own ripple, to start your own echo, to plant seeds with your whisper that will grow into forests of transformed lives. Your voice matters not because of how many people hear it, but because of how deeply it affects the ones who do. Your whisper matters not because of its volume, but because of its authenticity. Your words matter not because they're perfect, but because they're yours. Stop waiting for permission to use the voice you've been given. Stop believing the lie that you need credentials to share wisdom earned through living. Stop thinking you must be loud to be heard or famous to be influential. Start whispering your truth today. Start sharing what you've learned. Start speaking life into the people around you. Because somewhere in your whisper is exactly what someone needs to hear to begin rewriting their story. The world doesn't need another loud voice. It needs your authentic whisper. And it needs it now, because tomorrow is built on the words we speak today. Your whisper matters, and its echo is eternal.